Hello and welcome back to Behind the Trend, the place where we dig deeper into the headlines to bring you short stories, big insights. I'm your host, Melissa. Today, we are turning our eyes to the American South, specifically to the Commonwealth of Virginia. It is a state steeped in the very foundations of American history, a place where the echoes of the past often mingle with the politics of the present. But this week, the headlines aren't just about politics as usual. They are about a profound shift in the timeline of history. For 250 years, since the colonies first declared their independence, the highest office in Virginia has been held exclusively by men. That streak ends now. We are covering the inauguration of Abigail Spanberger, a former CIA case officer and Congresswoman who is shattering a centuries-old glass ceiling to become Virginia's first female governor. In this special report, we're going to look beyond the ceremony. We'll explore the pageantry and grandeur of the day, the diverse team stepping into power alongside her, and the intense political landscape she is inheriting, one where Richmond is poised to become a counterweight to Washington. So, settle in. This is the story of how Madam Governor became a reality in the Old Dominion. The atmosphere in Richmond this Saturday is electric. We are witnessing a midday inauguration ceremony set against the backdrop of the historic state capitol designed by Thomas Jefferson. Reports from the ground describe the event as being filled with pageantry and grandeur, a fitting tribute for a moment that changes the face of the state's leadership. Following the swearing-in, a traditional inaugural parade will kick off, winding through the streets of Richmond. But amidst the marching bands and the cheering crowds, there is a specific, solemn ritual that marks the transition of power. The outgoing Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, will hand Abigail Spanberger the key to the executive mansion. It's a small physical gesture, but it carries immense weight. It signifies the end of Youngkin's tenure and the beginning of a new chapter where Democrats are once again pulling the levers of power in the state capitol. The symbolism here is impossible to overstate. Abigail Spanberger is being sworn in as the state's 75th governor. To understand the gravity of that number, you have to look back. Since Virginia became a Commonwealth in 1776, only men have held this post. In fact, if you go back even further, no woman served as a colonial governor before the Revolution either. For 2.5 centuries, the roll call of Virginia governors has been a list of fathers, sons, and brothers. Today, that list finally includes a daughter. When we talk about historic firsts, it's easy to get lost in the statistics and the dates. But for Spanberger, this milestone is personal, and she has spoken candidly about what it means for the future, not just for her, but for the children watching her take the oath. In a recent statement, Spanberger reflected on the normalization of female leadership. She said, "For the next generation of kids, it'll be normal to see a woman in this role, whether it's doing the joyful things of ribbon cuttings or the hard things of contending with whatever challenges we might be facing into the future." That normalization begins with the very language used in the halls of power. As she assumes office, Spanberger will be referred to with traditional formality as Madam Governor. Some officials are even dusting off the more archaic and prestigious title, referring to her as Her Excellency. It is a title that commands respect, but it also signals a shift in the identity of the state. Spanberger's journey to this podium wasn't a straight line. She is a former CIA case officer and a member of Congress, backgrounds that suggest a focus on intelligence, security, and strategy. She secured this seat by defeating Republican Winsome Earl Sears in the November election. It was a hard-fought contest, but the result is a Democratic reclamation of the governor's mansion, a significant swing after the previous Republican administration. However, the headline, "First Female Governor," is actually just the tip of the iceberg. If we pull back the curtain on this inauguration, we see that Spanberger is not walking into the history books alone. The entire incoming administration represents a massive demographic shift for Virginia. Joining her is the state's new lieutenant governor, Democrat Ghazala F. Hashmi. Hashmi is entering office at a historic moment in her own right, becoming the first Muslim woman to ever serve in a statewide office in the United States. And completing this trio is Democrat Jay Jones, who will become Virginia's first Black Attorney General. He will be sworn into his post in Richmond, a city that was once the capital of the Confederacy. We cannot talk about this transformation without looking at the physical symbols changing around them. Just weeks before the inauguration, Governor-elect Spanberger was seen greeting visitors at a dedication ceremony for a new statue at the Capitol. The statue depicts civil rights activist Barbara Rose Johns. For those who don't know, Johns was a teenager who led a student strike for equal education in the 1950s. Her likeness is replacing one of the statues of Robert E. Lee that had previously represented Virginia at the Capitol. Think about that image. A governor, who is the first woman in history, standing next to a statue of a young civil rights icon that replaced a Confederate general, while preparing to govern alongside the first Black attorney general and the first Muslim female lieutenant governor. The visual landscape of Virginia politics is being rewritten in real time. Now, let's pivot to the big insights part of our show. Why does this election matter beyond the boundaries of Virginia? To understand that, we have to look at the national map. Spanberger's inauguration marks a new chapter where Democrats are pulling the levers of power in the state government while Republicans are running the show just 100 miles north in Washington, D.C. This creates a fascinating dynamic. The sources tell us that Spanberger ran her campaign specifically on a vow to protect Virginia's economy from what she described as the aggressive tactics of President Donald Trump's administration. Virginia is unique because its economy is deeply tied to the federal government. On the campaign trail, Spanberger warned voters about the White House's plans for gutting the civil service. For a state home to the Pentagon and countless federal agencies, changes to the civil service aren't just abstract political debates. They are threats to the livelihoods of thousands of Virginia families. She also campaigned on issues regarding the rising costs of goods, likely a reference to tariffs and trade policies, and changes impacting the state's already fragile healthcare system. So, while the inauguration is a celebration, it is also the positioning of a shield. Spanberger is positioning herself and her administration as a buffer between the policies of the Trump White House and the citizens of Virginia. This victory for Spanberger wasn't an isolated incident. It signals a broader resurgence for Democrats in the region. Just a year after the party suffered stunning losses nationwide in the 2024 presidential election, Virginia Democrats have managed to pick up 13 seats in the House of Delegates. This gives Spanberger a legislative reinforcement that her predecessor, Glenn Youngkin, often found himself battling against. Democrats in the State House have already vowed to work in lockstep with Spanberger to push through a bullish agenda. They aren't planning to play it safe. They have the momentum and they have the numbers. So, what is the first order of business for this historic administration? Aside from the immediate economic defenses we mentioned, there is a major structural change on the horizon. The sources indicate that the Democratic agenda includes redrawing the state's congressional district map. This is a critical move ahead of the midterm elections coming up this year. Redistricting is often where the real political battles are fought, determining the balance of power for a decade. With Democrats controlling the governorship and gaining ground in the legislature, this map-drawing process will likely be a focal point of the early days of the Spanberger administration. The outgoing governor, Glenn Youngkin, was present to deliver his State of the Commonwealth address just prior to this transition, acknowledging the applause of the General Assembly. But as he exits the stage, the spotlight belongs entirely to the new leadership. As the festivities in Richmond conclude and the parade routes are cleared, the real work begins. Abigail Spanberger is stepping into the governor's mansion with the weight of history on her shoulders. She is the first woman to hold the job in 250 years, leading a ticket that looks more like the modern world than the portraits of the past. She faces a fragile healthcare system, a combative relationship with the federal government in D.C., and the high expectations of a constituency that just handed her party a significant victory. It will be normal, as she said, for kids to see a woman in this role. And perhaps that is the biggest story of all. Not just that the glass ceiling was broken, but that the next generation will never know it was there. Thank you for watching this special edition of Behind the Trend. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Virginia's historic inauguration, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more short stories, big insights. I'm Melissa, and we'll see you next time.